Chapter 1 of Elements of Moral Philosophy starts out with giving us the problem of definition. And within that problem of a definition, what jumps out at us as being the most viable and universally recognizable basic definition of a moral way of living is by Socrates, which is the phrase, how we ought to live life. This is how we can define living morally and moral concepts. This should ultimately be their basis, because trying to build up onto this basis and trying to find a more complex definition ultimately isn't equal for everyone and not agreeable, and these definitions often conflict with each other. However, as how we ought to live stands, we do need this concept of a minimum moral concept, which basically is something every moral theory should accept in order for morality itself to be true, or else the concept of morality is not true because there are so many different of morality. So we need to agree on the minimum conception. So she goes through this issue of morality and finding ethics that fit in with morality and discussing and deciding by starting with examples of issues in our society which are very important and very hard to deal with, such as a brain-dead child. Do we harvest this child's organs? Is that morally correct? Is it morally correct to kill the child to save another child's life? Or, by killing a child who's going to die anyway and giving her organs to other people, we can save more lives, because that person who was born brain-dead wasn't given the ability to make their own decisions. They weren't given a quality of life. They weren't given mentality. So are we not, in a sense, sparing their inevitable death anyway and saving other people's lives? Or is killing people fundamentally wrong? These are the ethics that she discusses. And she actually does end up saying that it's better to save more people because we want to live in a society ultimately where we are ensuring the quality of life of a majority of our citizens and doing what's ethically right. And if we can save more people's lives by sparing the life of someone who's going to die anyway, then we should. And this ultimately leads on to the second example, which has the same trend. It's two conjoined twins. One has the ability to live. We see that the parents who are devout Christians don't believe in this, and that's their beliefs and their morals. However, by saving this one child, by splitting up the children, we're ensuring the life of one child who can live a long, healthy life, instead of both children dying shortly after their birth or shortly into their lifespans. So we're trying to save as many lives as possible. However, when we see in the case of Tracy Lorimer, which stands out from the other two, the girl with cerebral palsy, she was going to live. She wasn't going to quickly die or quickly perish like the other two. However, her quality of life was so bad that her father felt to kill her. She was suffering physically and mentally. Mentally, she was not fully conscious, not fully able to make decisions for herself. She wasn't mentally active. And physically, she was suffering. She was getting many surgeries. She was very sore. She spent her life in bed. So was her quality of life acceptable for human beings? Or was killing her sparing her? However, then we get into the argument of wrongness versus killing people is wrong. And we're also discriminating against the handicapped, and how this is going to lead to a slippery slope of letting other people kill other handicapped people because their lives are suffering. But then this argument, the slippery slope argument, is problematic because then we can just justify most things in our society by saying that they lead to other things. By saying that IVF treatments will lead us to fusing humans with pigs. Well, that's not going to happen. IVF actually led to millions of or thousands of people being able to have children who couldn't have children before. And that's a positive thing because it makes people happy and it adds to their lives and it adds to our society and community. So ultimately, we need to assess what's ethically going to help our community, what the basis is of these moral judgments and these moral groundings. And even if it is your child, are the ethics that you're enforcing on them the ethics best for our society, best for our world, and have the best reasoning? And this brings us to the end of her chapter, which she discusses reasoning's impartiality. So obviously everyone has impartiality when partiality when they're discussing their reasoning for things. So the basic requirement for impartiality should be that each individual's interests are equally important. So we need morals that enforce the fact that my interests are equally as important to yours. However, if I see my interest as being very important, my interest might say that you're a slave. think that I'm more superior to you due to the fact that I'm white and someone else isn't. Now, my interests aren't maybe important, but they also aren't valuing other people's interests. So my interests can't be valid in a moral sense. So this is basically the minimum conception, minimum moral conception, something every moral theory accepts. And that's a summary of the first chapter.